For these lessons, I will be using FlexColor 3.5 and Apple OS X. With the holder in the scanner, we can begin. First, we need to choose some overall settings. Open the Frame menu and select a frame that matches your holder. Displayed is a partial list of frame sizes. The list can be modified by selecting Customize from the menu. There are 17 holders for different film sizes and configurations. In addition, you can order custom size holders. For this example, I will select a medium format frame size. If your scanner supports auto frame recognition, you will have a button next to the frame menu. Highlighting this button turns on auto frame recognition, which automatically detects the appropriate frame size of your holder. This is an important feature to activate when using the optional batch feeder attachment available on the 848 scanner. From the Mode menu, select a color space in which to work. RGB saves your image as standard 8-bit TIFF files. RGB 16-bit creates 16-bit TIFF files. This saves your images with over 65,000 possible shade values per channel versus 256 shade values in standard 8-bit mode. For archival purposes, scanning 16-bit preserves the full tonality of your image. If you plan to make heavy tonal adjustments in Photoshop, you may wish to scan in 16-bit mode. Anytime you make a tonal adjustment in Photoshop, you will incur some data loss, and once it's gone, you'll never get it back. Scanning 16-bit will give you more editing headroom before you run into possible posterization in your image. Keep in mind when you do scan 16-bit, it doubles your file size and some Photoshop functions will not operate on 16-bit files. You can also scan in grayscale, grayscale 16-bit, line art, and cmyk. cmyk is grayed out because the RGB standard setup is selected. Displayed is a partial list of setups. These setups are designed for different types of images and different types of negative films. Select a setup that best matches your type of image or film. We have characterized over 100 popular types of negative films. A partial list of negative films is displayed by default. The entire list is automatically loaded on your computer during installation and can be added to the list. Scanning negatives can be challenging. However, the library of negative setups greatly simplifies the process. For this image, I will use RGB standard, which works on most color transparencies. To begin the scanning process, select Preview. The Preview command can also be activated by selecting F9 or Command-N on Mac or Control-N in Windows. This will draw the holder into the scanner and a preview is quickly displayed on your monitor. You will be making tonal corrections based on how your monitor displays color. Having a monitor that is calibrated on a regular basis is very important. I strongly encourage you to invest in a calibrated monitor system. By default, your cursor is in the crop mode. Crop your image as desired. At this point, be sure to crop inside the image area. Do not extend the crop outside the film frame or outside the frame holder. If you do, the auto function will see the black of your holder or film frame as the darkest point in the image and produce undesirable results. After you have made your tonal corrections, you can move the crop outside the image. Next, select the Auto button. All the parameters associated with this setup, in this case RGB standard, are applied, resulting in a near-perfect image with a single button. To create a final scan, simply select Scan, assign a file name, select Save, and your holder will be drawn into the scanner and begin scanning. Let's take a closer look at the Auto function. The Auto function is more powerful and flexible than typical auto features. There are over 80 different setup adjustments under your control with this single selection. The auto feature can be customized and fine-tuned to your specifications. Some of the features under your control are setting highlight and shadow points, contrast and brightness, curve adjustments, and applying unsharp mask. The auto function allows you to apply most FlexColor features in an automated and repeatable manner. If you are looking for ways to increase your productivity, be sure to utilize this feature. As you can see, with the power of the setups supplied with your scanner and a library of custom setups you create, FlexColor makes scanning fast and simple. Through the use of the auto feature, 90% or more of the work is finished with a single selection. In other lessons, we will cover the tools under your control with the auto feature. Now that we have seen the power behind the setups supplied with FlexColor, let me show you how to create your own custom setup and explain some additional functions found in the Setup window. From the File menu, select Setup. Up pops a window with some familiar looking tabs. Our current setup is RGB standard. When the auto command is selected from the main window, all the settings associated with RGB standard are applied to the image. To create a custom setup, select New, enter in a name, select Create. Any changes will be stored under the new setup. Now let's go through each tab and customize this setup. You can define which mode you wish to work in, a default frame size, your film type, your optimization, a default resolution and zoom percentage. D-screen is used when scanning offset printed originals. It minimizes the appearance of rosette patterns found in offset printed material by defocusing the image. Adaptive light will increase the exposure time. On older scanners, this will increase the light intensity. This may be useful on extremely dark originals. Mirror allows you to mirror your images automatically. Enhanced shadow detail. The scanner will automatically use this feature if your scanner benefits from enhanced shadow detail. Leave this at its default. You can select if you wish to work in centimeters or inches. For this setup, I will choose inches. The next tab is Contrast. Here we can set our contrast controls. In addition, any curve adjustments will be saved. The Texture tab controls our unsharp mask and flex touch settings. Under Color Percentage, we control the distribution of the sharpened information back into RGB. Sharpening is only applied to the luminance information. As the data is converted back to RGB, you control how much of that information is distributed to individual color channels. If you have an overly noisy channel, you may wish to restrict the amount of sharpening information in that channel. Here is a selective color correction tool laid out in a different format. Auto controls how FlexColor computes what it thinks the highlight and shadow values should be based on your histogram of your image. When you use the Auto button, it modifies the values of the percentages you set here to find the final setting. The percentage is applied to the difference between the highlight and shadow settings. For example, if the values of the auto percentage are set to 0, then selecting Auto will set the highlight and shadow point at the darkest and lightest point in the image. If you set the percentage to a negative value, this will cause the automatic controls to use a less extreme setting for highlight and shadow. You can also turn the cast correction on or off. Under Dot, you control the output values. Endpoint determines what happens to the input values that exceed the defined limit. See your manual for a detailed description. For most applications, use the default / setting. The Color Sync tab controls how your ICC profiles are applied. Under Input, select the profile that matches your scanner. When scanning negatives, select Flextight Input. The setup supplied with your scanner will automatically choose the appropriate input profile. Under RGB, select the same RGB color space you are using in Photoshop. Select an appropriate CMYK profile if you plan to scan in CMYK. Always check the Embed box. This embeds the scanner or input profile and will correctly translate the way in which your scanner sees color. Convert, as the name implies, will automatically convert from the input profile to the RGB profile. Soft Proof works only when scanning CMYK. This will simulate what your image will look like on your selected output device. This feature combines the ICC profile of your monitor with the input profile of your scanner and your selected cmyk output profile in FlexColor. Once you have completed your adjustments, select Save. Our custom setup is shown and ready to be used. All the settings saved with our new setup can be applied simply by selecting the Auto button. In addition to learning how to use the scanning tools, it is important to use them in the correct order. Step 1. Set highlight and shadow. Step 2. Adjust contrast and brightness. Step 3. Fine-tune color. And last, apply unsharp mask. I have found this to be an efficient workflow that builds upon each step. I will outline each of these steps in more detail. Try to make most of your global tonal corrections in FlexColor. While working in FlexColor, you are working with raw data. Tonal adjustments downstream may incur some data loss. To set your highlight and shadow point, I will use the histogram tool. Select the histogram icon from the main window. The histogram window contains a graph that shows the tonal information and range of your image, with shadow information on the left and highlight information on the right. It plots the levels from 0 to 255 along the horizontal axis and the number of pixels at each level along the vertical axis. This is a composite of the red, green, and blue channels. First, I select the Auto button. This finds a highlight and shadow point based on the histogram. The screen will reflect the new highlight and shadow points. I can manually adjust my shadow and highlight points by selecting the triangles and moving them with my cursor. Once a slider has been selected, I can use the arrow keys to make precise adjustments. Holding down the Control key while using the arrows causes the sliders to move in large increments. Use Control Tab to move between the highlight and shadow sliders. You can also use the eyedropper tools to manually set your shadow and highlight points. The middle eyedropper acts as a gray balance tool. If you have a neutral gray area in your image, you can use this tool to color balance your image. Try to locate a neutral gray object. Choose something that falls somewhere between the midtone range. In this case, I'll select the knife. To judge if your selection falls near the midtone, monitor your red, green, and blue values as you float your cursor near the area. Midtone values fall between 120 and 180. Over this area, my RGB values are currently reading red 166, green 165, and blue 169. Don't be concerned if they're not exactly the same. Here is another method to judge if the selection falls near the midtone. In the histogram window is a vertical dotted line. Notice as I move the cursor to different areas of the image, the dotted line indicates where the pixels fall on the histogram. Your midtone will fall somewhere in the middle between the highlight and shadow points. Be sure to experiment with different gray balance points until you find the right look and mood. Next is Show Final Values. This shows the histogram as it appears after the shadow and highlight points have been applied. This is helpful for checking if you have clipped highlight or shadow information. Selecting Keep Cast preserves the color cast in the original. By default, the Auto button will remove color cast from the highlight and shadows. For example, when scanning a sunset image, the Auto function will turn your golden highlights to white. Selecting Keep Cast will preserve them. These triangles on the right of your histogram are your output values. These allow you to set the output values and compress the tonal range of your image. For example, if your press can hold a 5% dot, you would set your output levels accordingly. Consult your printer for the proper output settings. The Reset button removes all highlight, gray balance, color cast, and shadow settings. It only resets functions found in this window. At the bottom left corner of the histogram window is a triangle. Select this triangle to show each color channel individually. Note that in addition to setting shadow and highlight points, you can control the midpoint of each channel. Adjusting the endpoints and midpoints in an individual channel can be useful for achieving a good color balance. Now that I've set the highlight and shadow point from the previous lesson, we can move on to the next step, adjusting contrast and brightness. For this, select a gradation icon. The gradation window allows you to control the brightness, contrast, and color of your image. At the top, we have two sliders for changing overall contrast and brightness. For more precise tonal adjustments, I recommend the use of the curves. The gamma slider lets you alter the midtone without affecting the extreme highlight or shadow points. This tool is useful for correcting overexposed or underexposed images. The gamma setting applies a predefined gradation curve. However, unlike standard gradation curves, the gamma setting is strictly controlled. This enables you to create a custom input profile that is calibrated to the scanner at a given gamma setting. Selecting the triangle at the bottom left of the window opens up the curve window. Curves give you a tremendous amount of control over the contrast, brightness, and color of your image. The bottom left point of the curve represents the starting point of your shadow information. The upper right point is the starting point of your highlight information. The grid intersects the curve at 3 points: the quarter tone, mid-tone, and the three-quarter tone. We are working on a scale from 0 to 255. So for example, your mid-tone information is going to have a numerical value around 128. Here are some examples of how curves can be used to enhance the tone of your image. To increase the overall brightness, place a point at the mid-tone and pull the point towards the upper left corner of the window. Release the point to update the preview. Pulling the control point in the opposite direction decreases brightness. To increase overall contrast without blowing out your delicate highlights or plugging up the shadows, I first place a control point at the quarter tone and the three-quarter tone. I then pull the control point up at the quarter tone and down at the three-quarter tone. Steepening the curve increases contrast between the 2 points. You increase contrast in those areas of your image that fall between the 2 control points. To remove the control points, select a point, then select the Delete or Backspace key. The eyedropper allows you to select a point in your preview, and that exact point is placed on the curve. This allows you to pinpoint specific ranges within your image you wish to enhance. For example, select in the image and that exact point is placed on the curve. Place points above and below the first point. Then remove the first point. Pull the points up and down. This will increase the contrast to the pixels that fall between the 2 points. Here are some tips for controlling your curve points. To move a curve point in a vertical axis, hold down the Shift key while moving the point. To make very small curve movements, you can use the arrows on the keyboard. To move in larger increments, hold down the Control key while using the arrow keys. To move between different points, toggle the Control Tab keys. In addition to controlling the red, green, and blue channels together, we also have access to the individual color channels. The ability to adjust all 6 color channels gives you an enormous amount of control. I recommend investing some time becoming comfortable making adjustments with curves. They give you a tremendous amount of control over the tonality of your image. To begin, pick the color correction icon from the main window. The Selective Color Correction tool is excellent for fine-tuning the color in your image. When you just can't seem to achieve the right tone by pulling a curve, try using this tool. With the Selective Color Correction tool, you can make adjustment to color ranges. For example, you can pull some magenta out of the reds without affecting the magenta component of the other colors. This image has a serious color cast. I generally will first try to use the Curves tool to remove this type of cast. However, with this image, adding some blue to remove the yellow cast starts to fix the problem but throws the rest of the image out of balance. The Selective Color tool works within a narrow range of colors, just what we need for this image. To use this tool, start by selecting a color you wish to adjust. If you are uncertain which color to pick, use the eyedropper and select a general area of the image you wish to enhance. The dominant color from your selection is automatically listed from the 6 colors. This will give you a good starting point to begin making your adjustments. Use your judgment and increase or decrease the different colors until you get the desired color. The eyedropper icon displays the original color from your selection. Below the icon, the adjusted color is shown. Use the Apply button to view your image before and after your adjustments. We can also adjust our saturation level with the saturation slider. If the color is shown in bold, that indicates a color value other than 0 has been applied. Selecting the Reset button returns all your selective color adjustments to 0. It does not affect any of your other FlexColor settings. The image you see is a previously scanned 3F file. We will begin by selecting the magnifier window icon. You are presented with the new window known as the Detail window. This Detail window provides you with a zoomed-in, high-resolution preview similar to the previews found in the old unsharp mask window. The preview window has been dramatically improved. For example, you can enlarge and resize the window by selecting the green Window button, or by dragging the corner of the window. To fill the window with a zoomed-in view, move your cursor inside the Detail window and select anywhere inside this window. Now move your cursor over the preview image and select an area you wish to view at a magnified level. FlexColor will process the file and show a high-resolution preview. I can also open additional windows. By selecting the plus symbol, I can open up to 4 windows. You can also select zoom values of 100, 200, and 400%. The old magnifier function is still available under a different icon found next to the lock icon. But wait, there's more. Wouldn't it be nice if you could compare different amounts of unsharp mask in each of the 4 windows? Well, now we can. Let me show you how this is done. First, select the unsharp mask icon. We are presented with a new window called Texture. These unsharp mask values are being applied to each detail window. From the first detail window on the left, select the lock icon. This will lock in all the unsharp mask values along with any other tonal corrections you have made up to this point. Now open a second detail window and choose the same area of the image as the first window. From the unsharp mask window, I will make a change to the settings. Notice how the second detail window reflects the new unsharp mask value. This process can be repeated for the third and fourth detail windows. With multiple windows, I can quickly and accurately select the correct amount of sharpening to apply to this image. Here are some tips when using the detail window. You must first unlock the window to make a new selection. To change your view, you need to first select inside the window and pick in the preview. To reduce this back and forth motion, you can use the Tab key to activate the window and select a new image area. Select Tab, select Tab, select Tab. This is a pretty handy feature. To begin, select the texture icon from the main window. The unsharp mask filter looks at every pixel in the image and compares each pixel with its neighbors. based on your settings, it increases the contrast between those pixels, thereby increasing apparent sharpness. FlexColor uses a luminance-based sharpening technique, which applies sharpening only to the luminance information of your image. This is a preferred method of applying sharpening versus applying sharpening to the color information. Let's look at the controls within the Unsharp Mask tool. First up is a mount. This works on a scale from 0 to 999. Think of a mount as the volume control on your radio. The more you increase the amount, the greater the sharpening effect. So how much sharpening should you apply? Well, that depends. Since sharpening is applied to every pixel, the amount applied is resolution and output device dependent. For example, if you were to print the same image at different sizes on the same output device, you would apply different amounts of sharpening to achieve the same visual appearance of sharpness. Just as scanning the same image at 10 megabytes and 100 megabytes would require different amounts of sharpening to achieve that same level of sharpness, because one file has many more pixels than the other. The subject matter of the image will also affect how much sharpening will look good. Portraits and low contrast images require different settings than images with fine detail or high contrast. Your taste and style will also dictate the correct amount of sharpening to apply. Dark limit sets the level below which no sharpening is applied. This is done on a scale from 0 to 255. With the value of 10, for example, the first 10 steps of your shadow detail, no sharpening is applied. Sharpening in the shadows can sometimes create unwanted noise or textures in your image. This tool prevents sharpening from being applied to the shadow information, which I find to be very useful. Grain limit prevents you from sharpening low contrast areas of your image, such as film grain, noise, or textures. It works on a scale from 0 to 255. Grain limit works by comparing the value of each pixel with the surrounding pixels. If the difference is less than the grain limit setting, then no sharpening is applied. A good example of a low contrast area would be a clear blue sky. The sky will have pixels of very similar values and typically would not benefit from being sharpened. Grain limit allows you to fine-tune which pixels in your image will be sharpened. The radius setting controls the width of the sharpening effect. The setting you choose will depend very much on the subject matter and the size of your output. The Apply box is used to preview the image with and without sharpening. Prior to applying Unsharp Mask in FlexColor, it is very important to select the final output size and output resolution of your image. For this example, I will use a previously scanned 3F file. With my final output resolution and PPI set, I will open up a detail window and make a selection in the preview. Sharpening is applied to the image and shown in the detail window. FlexColor gives you an accurate preview of your Unsharp Mask settings based on your final output size and resolution. Viewing your sharpened image at final size is critical for making accurate sharpening decisions. Let me show you how to use the detail windows in conjunction with the Unsharp Mask tool. Use one window to preview important features that benefit from additional sharpening. For example, some area of high detail. Use a second window to preview an area that may not benefit from too much sharpening. So let's do that. I'll open up a second window. Pick up here. For example, low contrast areas like clear skies or skin will not benefit if too much sharpening is applied. Then compare the two previews with different amounts of Unsharp Mask. By using this method, you can balance the proper amount of sharpening in your image. A common question regarding sharpening is, should I apply sharpening in FlexColor or in Photoshop? Well, that depends. For example, if you know the final print size and output device, and you will not be repurposing the image, then apply sharpening in FlexColor. It's faster and has an additional control over Photoshop. If you plan to use an image at different sizes or output devices, you may elect not to apply any sharpening, or you may apply a small amount of sharpening in FlexColor to compensate for the analog to digital conversion. Then apply a second round of sharpening in Photoshop targeted to the size and output device. Every image normally requires some amount of sharpening because you're capturing the continuous tones of the film and converting them into square pixels. This lesson uncovers my favorite new feature, Flextouch. No matter how careful you are with your originals, some amount of dust or scratches will be present on your film and captured when scanning. With the release of FlexColor 3.5, we've added a new feature called Flextouch. This is a marvelous feature that significantly reduces the time spent removing small particles of dust and scratches from your originals. Let me show you how this tool works. First, open the texture window. When viewing an image at full view, there may be some large dust particles that are visible at this zoom level. I know from experience there may be many more smaller dust particles that are only visible when zoomed in at 100%. So let's zoom in to 100% and see what we find. Here we see a number of small dust particles that have been sharply captured. There may be hundreds of these small dust particles lurking around in your scanned images. To view the effects of Flextouch, I need to open the Detail window. By simply selecting the Flextouch Apply box, I can quickly and accurately, without blurring the entire image, remove the small bits of dust and scratches not only in this small detail window, but the entire image. Notice delicate detail has not been removed, only the dust. To fine-tune Flextouch, I can open up the Level command and adjust the sensitivity. I have found that values between 50 and 60 works well on most images. This tool works on a scale between 0 and 100. Flextouch eliminates the time-consuming process of scrolling around your image at 100%, looking for small specks of dust, and using your editing tools to remove them. With the 3F file, you also have the ability to save the dust and scratch information as a separate layer in Photoshop and remove the dust and scratch information selectively. Flextouch does not dramatically impede your scan time. It is designed to remove small artifacts visible at 100%. For larger artifacts, I recommend the editing tools found within Photoshop and artistically remove them. In the upper left-hand corner of the main window is the Scan 3F feature. 3F stands for Flexible File Format. This is an enhanced version of the standard TIFF file format. 3F creates a raw 16-bit file, meaning no tonal adjustments have been applied to the image. Each 3F file contains a high-quality preview, full history of applied settings, and the ability to store metadata information. 3F creates a digital original which can be repurposed for different usages from a single file. Throughout this lesson, I will point out the many benefits of the 3F file format. Prior to scanning in 3F for the first time, I recommend setting your 3F preferences. This can be found by selecting from the menu at the top under FlexColor and Preferences. Select the 3F tab and you will notice some settings we can adjust. You can select if 3F files should be scanned at certain percentages of the possible file size of the original, or select the maximum 16-bit file size created from any size original. Select an appropriate file size based on your workflow and future usage of the files. In most cases, a 200 megabyte 16-bit file is sufficient. Next we have a byline and copyright field. These can be filled in with your name and copyright information. This information, stored as metadata, is contained in your 3F file and can be accessed downstream by other applications such as Photoshop and image management databases that conform to the ITPC standard. This 3F feature is very important for several reasons. Any image you create is an important asset which should have your name and copyright associated with the file. Remember, with 3F we are creating a digital original. You would never dream of sending a film original to a client without your name on it. The same care should be applied to a digital file. 3F automates this task. Each file you create in 3F will have your information automatically embedded in the file. You'll never have to worry about your digital original leaving the studio without your information. Now that we have set up our 3F preferences, we can begin scanning. Simply select the Scan 3F button and FlexColor will begin scanning in the 3F file format. A preview scan is not required. If your scanner supports auto frame recognition, selecting the proper frame size is not mandatory. With auto frame recognition, FlexColor will detect which size holder you have loaded and scan a full frame image. You can apply a setup if you wish to your 3F file, however, it's not necessary. You may, for example, apply a setup to your color negatives, which will convert your negative to a positive, giving you a color preview. This is done by first previewing the image, applying a setup, then scan 3F. Once you have captured your image, simply treat the 3F file as you would a normally scanned image. Select Save once you have completed making your total adjustments to the settings, and a standard TIFF file is created. To access your images once they've been captured in the 3F file format, select the thumbnail icon. Your images are stored by default in a folder called Scratchpad. Those of you with our digital back will already be familiar with this feature. Displayed is your collection of 3F files. Each 3F file is automatically assigned a name and a sequential number. The default prefix name is Picture. This can be customized to your own naming convention. Let's look at some of the other features of 3F. Highlight the thumbnail and select Get Info. From here we can view the 3F preferences we set earlier, the byline and copyright tags. In addition, we can see when the file was created, the file size, the size of the original, when it was last modified, and the scan resolution. We can also add keywords that can be used by image management applications to quickly search and find the image you need. To insert keywords, select Add and type in your information. A caption field is also available. Selecting the General Information pull-down gives you access to the history of this image. Each state or version of your image is recorded, listed here, and can be retrieved for reuse or rework. 3F stores not only your original 16-bit image captured in a totally raw state, 3F will record all the different iterations of your image you may have created. All the tonal corrections and changes you make to the file are stored in the original 3F file. This enables you to produce many different output-optimized images from a single file. For example, you can create from one file an image optimized for an inkjet printer, a cmyk press, and the web. All this from your original raw 16-bit scan or capture. You need only store the original 3F file because all the information necessary to create subsequent versions are contained in a very small settings file within the 3F file. If you need a version of this image you created months ago, you can create an exact duplicate of that image from the original raw 3F file. This can dramatically reduce your storage requirements. Each 3F file also contains a high-quality preview file. This preview file can be used by image database programs to give you a quick preview of the image instead of loading what could be a very large file. Let's create a file optimized to a particular output device from a 3F file. Begin by selecting an image. This is done by double-clicking the image or single-click the image and select Show to bring the image forward in the main window. From the Setup window, I will select a previously saved setup optimized for this image, and for the output device, in this case, an inkjet printer. My output dimensions and resolution are set, along with tonal corrections contained within this setup. To create the file, select Save and enter a file name. Since I always have my thumbnail, which shows me what the file looks like, I have some flexibility when entering a file name. In this case, I will use inkjet printer. Notice once the file has been saved, the setup has been changed to the file name. Now let's open the thumbnails and look at the information recorded. My file is already highlighted, so I will select Get Info. Here you can see the file we created, along with the date and time. This file was saved as an RGB file. The check mark denotes the preferred default version of the file. The I symbol indicates which version is currently being viewed. To change the default version, highlight a new file and select Make Default. Notice how the preview image changed to reflect the black and white version of the image. Along the bottom are some additional options. Show will use the highlighted version and open in the main window. Delete allows you to remove a history setting. Add Current will take your current settings from the main window and apply to the current highlighted history setting. Let's take a look at some of the other 3F features found in the thumbnail window. We have already explored the Get Info window. Delete allows you to delete any 3F files highlighted in the thumbnail window. Show displays your image in the main window. Selecting Save brings up the Batch Save window. 3F files have several save options. You have the ability to select multiple images and batch save them. You can save images as normal files, previews, or as layers. Save Normal, as the name implies, saves your files as standard TIFF files. Preview saves a 1.3 megabyte TIFF file. This is a convenient method to create files that can be emailed to clients for review or for web pages. This option saves you from opening each individual file, which could be hundreds of megabytes, and resizing and saving them to a 1.3 megabyte file. The last method, Save as Layers, will create a separate layer in Photoshop containing the dust and scratch information identified by Flextouch. This will allow you to selectively remove dust and scratch information in Photoshop. When using our digital back, this will create separate layers from multiple shots. This could be used to brush the lighting from each layer into the ideal lighting for that image. Save individual settings and croppings will save the default version of your 3F image with the settings of the default version into a TIFF file. If you have created multiple versions of your original 3F file, remember the version with the check mark next to it is the default version. Select the Make Default button to set a different default image. Save Current will save a version of your 3F file based on your current settings from the main window into a TIFF file. Selecting Modify brings up the Modify Selected Images window. This gives you several methods to modify not only one image, but multiple images, allowing you to perform batch modifications. With Add Setting, you apply the current setting to images you have selected from the thumbnail folder. You can also type in a file setting to be applied. In addition, you can specify if this should be the default setting for those images. This is a time-saving feature if you have numerous images you wish to modify with the same setting. For example, you could take all your selected images and convert them from RGB to CMYK. Rename gives you the option to rename and renumber single or multiple files selected from the thumbnail window. Neutralize is designed for images captured with our digital back. You can apply the neutralization of the currently loaded image to the selected 3F captures. This is an excellent tool for digital captures. Unprocessed capture is a digital back function which removes processed data from your capture, thereby reducing the file size. Approve is primarily a digital back function, allowing you to only process files which have been approved. Approved files are indicated by a check mark in the thumbnail. Folder gives you access to the other folders on your computer where you may be storing 3F files. If you are using OS X and have forgotten where your current thumbnail folder is located, simply hold down the Command key while you select the folder icon in the title bar. This will display the full path of your thumbnail folder. Search is a handy tool for locating images. Simply type in a word, followed by return or enter. All the images with this keyword or file name will be displayed. Process is a digital back function facilitating which files will be processed. Name for new image allows you to change the prefix given to each 3F file. The images in your thumbnail folder can be sorted by name or date in ascending or descending order. They can be further sorted by approval. Size is used to change the size of the thumbnails. The amount of images in your thumbnail folder is shown along with the remaining space available on your hard drive. This icon will toggle the crop mask feature. This tool will mask off the area outside your current crop. You can also open many of these features by holding down the Control key as you highlight the image on Mac or right-click on Windows. Here are a few tips for selecting multiple files from your thumbnail window. Hold down the Command key on Mac, Control key on Windows to select non-consecutive images. Shift-click to select consecutive images. Press Command A on Mac or Control A in Windows to select all images, or select all from the Edit menu. With the images highlighted, the thumbnails can be printed. This can be done by holding down the Control key and clicking in the thumbnail window and selecting the Print command. In Windows, this is done by right-clicking your mouse button. With this version of FlexColor, the application can be used without being attached to the scanner or digital back. This allows for distributed image editing. Images can be captured on one workstation and edited on other workstations using FlexColor. Since 3F files are TIFF files, it is possible to open them directly in Photoshop. However, if you do edit the file and save it, Photoshop will strip off the metadata information plus the low-res preview. The file will no longer be a valid 3F file. Therefore, to support editing of the 3F files in Photoshop, we have developed an Imacon 3F file format plugin. When installing FlexColor, this will be placed in a folder called Plugins in the same folder as the FlexColor application. Whenever FlexColor is launched, it will make sure that the plugin is installed in all known Adobe Photoshop plugin folders. When opening a 3F file in Photoshop, after the 3F plugin has been installed, you'll see that the default file format is now Imacon 3F. You will have the possibility of editing and saving the file in this format without losing any of the information specific to the 3F file format. With the initial version of the plugin, the image dimensions must remain unchanged. Let's begin at the top. Batch Scan allows you to create multiple scans in one or more originals contained on a single holder. Each scan in the batch can have completely different settings. For example, if you used a holder with multiple openings, each image could have different resolutions, crops, color spaces, etc. Let's add a few batch scans. Start by making a crop and select Add. FlexColor automatically numbers the files. Add in a second crop, add those again. Simply save your normal adjustments for each scan and hit Scan and walk away. FlexColor will take over and apply your saved settings. Note that FlexColor also totals your file size and approximate scan time. Under Preset, if you find yourself creating the same batch scan settings, they may be saved and recalled through the Preset command. Double-clicking the batch scan list opens up Batch Scan Info window. Here you can find detailed information on each batch scan. Specify allows you to select where your batch scans will be saved. When you're using the 848 scanner with the optional batch feeder, you can activate the 3F batch scan by selecting Scan 3F. Starting at the currently selected feeder position, a 3F scan will be generated from all the holders automatically until an empty or the last position is reached. The images will be sent to your current thumbnail folder. Position 1 is the top position of the feeder's magazine. When scanning a single holder, be sure to load your holder in position 1. When scanning multiple holders, skipping a position will cause the scanner to stop scanning. Unload will unload the currently loaded holder. This also can be activated by turning the scanner on and off. Home will unload the currently loaded holder and return the feeder to its home position. The cross symbol next to the setup indicates when a change has been made to the default setup. At the top of the frame pull-down is a new selection called Customize. This opens the Frames window. Here you will see a list of common frame sizes relevant to your scanner. Predefined frames cannot be changed. These are marked with a non-edit symbol. A check mark is placed next to each frame shown in the frame pull-down window. You can select which frame size appears in your frame pull-down by highlighting the frame and selecting Include. Selecting New brings up the ability to create a new frame for a custom holder. Enter in a file name and select Create. If your scanner supports auto frame recognition, as on the 848 or 646, you can automatically define a custom holder by simply scanning it. This will make a custom holder recognized by the auto frame detection and enable full use of the capabilities of your custom holder. This little thermometer icon brings up the Color Info button. This allows you to select up to 5 sample points in your image and monitor the values of these points. I will usually select a highlight point, a midpoint, and a shadow point. As you make tonal corrections, you can monitor the effect they have on the critical areas of your image. You can also set the amount of pixels that are sampled, and you can also hide the points or remove them entirely. Optimize can be somewhat confusing. With quality selected, all images will be scanned at a true optical resolution without interpolation. Speed enables faster scan times by taking advantage of resizing. Let's open up PPI to better illustrate this. You will notice some resolutions that are underlined. These are the true optical resolutions. The software determines which scan resolutions are the true optical resolutions based on the size of your original and the zoom percentage. With quality selected, even if you select a resolution that is not underlined and not a true optical resolution, it will still scan using a true optical resolution. For example, if I were to select 3000 ppi, which is not underlined, the scanner would actually scan at the next highest resolution, which is underlined and a true optical resolution, and resize the file down to 3000 ppi, thus maintaining the highest possible quality at the selected resolution. Selecting resolutions that are not underlined will take longer to scan than underlined resolutions in the quality mode. With speed selected, the opposite occurs. Selecting the same 3000 ppi, the image will be scanned at the next lower underlined true optical resolution and resample the image up to 3000 ppi, giving you a much faster scan time. Now here's where it gets somewhat confusing. If you own a Flextight Precision 3 or newer, you have a third option, True Resolution. True Resolution does not make you sacrifice quality over speeds. All the scan resolutions are true optical resolutions without resizing, thus improving your scanning speed. If your scanner supports true resolution, make this your default setting. Here we have output size. You can specify image size, zoom percentage, and resolution. Let's say, for example, your printer requests a file 300 dpi at size, and you want to print this image at 8 inches by 10 inches. Select the appropriate PPI, enter in the desired width, select Return, enter in the desired height, followed by Return. Now position your crop and select the lock icon. This will lock in the aspect ratio of your crop. When setting your height and width, be sure your crop is not activated. Here we have the zoom controls. I will use a 3F file to demonstrate these. You have zoom out, zoom in, and zoom fit. Another way to fit the entire preview in the window is to use the keyboard shortcut Command 0 on the Mac or Control 0 in Windows. To zoom 100%, hold down the Control Option Command and select 0 on the Mac, Control Alt 0 in Windows. Let's zoom in a little bit here. And if I hold down the space bar, I can use the grab tool to pan around the image. Under Orientation, we can mirror the image, and we can also rotate the image clockwise and counterclockwise. The R symbol shows the current orientation. The grid icon overlays a grid on your image. This can be used to check alignment. To change the grid color or number of lines, hold down the Option key while selecting the grid icon, or Alt in Windows. For OS X and Windows users, we have added this handy feature called Crop Mask. This tool will mask off the area outside your current crop. Grayed out is soft proof. To activate soft proof, you must work in a cmyk mode. Select soft proof if you wish to approximate what your image will look like on your selected output device. This feature combines the ICC profile of your monitor with the input profile of your scanner and your selected cmyk output profile in flex color. A calibrated monitor is essential for soft proofing. Autofocus is available on some scanner models. If your scanner supports the mounted slide adapter, autofocus is designed to compensate for the varying focus points encountered when scanning slides. Autofocus works by comparing contrasts in the image to fine-tune the focus point. This also may be used on other film holders. Let's examine the preference window. This can be found from the Flex Color menu under Preferences. Under the Scanner tab, we control the power management features. Use external white calibration is checked by default and should remain checked. Auto frame recognition is available on some scanner models. Each holder has its own unique identification code on the holder's leading edge. When checked, the scanner will automatically read the information code and adjust the frame set accordingly. Save Image gives you the option of opening the files after scanning or capture automatically in Photoshop. Auto after new crop will apply the auto feature each time you make a new crop. This can be toggled on and off by holding down the Option key when selecting a crop. The Camera tab has options for selecting which camera model is in use. Also, shutter and flash delay can also be set. From the preview window, you can open up your 3F files by holding down the Command key on the Mac and use your left and right arrow keys to open previous and next 3F files from your thumbnail folder.